Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another weekly fighting roundup, and of course, got the boxing and then MMA news today. If you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So, going into this fight, into this roundup, starting with the boxing news, of course, Crawford has been made a WBC welterweight champion in recess. That is him, but before him moving up into the super welterweight division. I don't necessarily know why he has been made champion in welterweight in recess, but either way he has. Homas has joined No Limit Boxing. Quinn versus Kelsall, O'Leary versus Foley, McGivern versus Omar, Murphy versus Turner, Herrera, Turner, Cairns, Lavin, Fury and Bark will fight June 28th. Fitzgerald is set to return to boxing. Welland, Zarbek, Zarin, Brown, Majid and Fielding will fight June 21st. Mbili will fight Derevianchenko August 17th. McKenna will rematch Mimoun August 3rd. Rose Jr. will fight McCrory June 28th. Canelo is set to vacate his IBF title. It's another interesting purse bids problem. It's annoying that this stuff keeps happening, and I don't necessarily think ever in boxing that's kind of going to change, but he didn't want to fight William Skull. I mean, it could have been an interesting fight, but either way, nobody fan-wise really wanted to see it, and financial-wise it doesn't make sense, and there was other better fights realistically that everybody would prefer to see Canelo in, so he's had to seemingly vacate. He hasn't done it yet, I believe, but yeah, like I say, he's seemingly going to. Fury is set to a rematch usyk December 21st. I really like this date. I really hope it does come to be that date. Obviously just before Christmas, probably final boxing event of the year. Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense for that to be the case, and I'm just really hoping that that is. You know, obviously it's not October or anything like that, but either way, as long as it's this year, then there's nothing to complain about in my opinion. Smith is set to fight Fernandez in September. Fulgham will fight Ellis June 27th. Batir Gaziev will fight Carroll July 12th. Adbisi has joined Let's Go Management. Paul versus Tyson is off. Tyson getting an injury. Still seems like he wants to get the fight going at some point, but realistically, my opinions have always been the same. I don't think it should happen. I hope it doesn't happen, and obviously we'll have to wait and see what goes on with it, but hopefully not. We might see it rescheduled. It'll be interesting to see if Paul still actually does end up fighting at this new higher weight come to July time, but we'll have to wait and see. Lemos has joined Top Rank. Marku is in talks to rematch Congo. Baumgartner is set to fight Persoon August 10th. Littler is willing to fight in Misfits. I thought I'd mention it. Luke Littler. He's only 17. I don't necessarily know if he should be fighting in Misfits, but either way, seems like he's up for it. Shields is set to fight a Lepage Joannis July 27th. Her moving up in weight again to fight and putting the higher women's weight divisions onto a little bit of notice, which is nice to see because they haven't really been getting that much notice. So yeah, like I say, it'd be nice to see. Zhu versus Ortiz Jr. is off. That's down to Zhu's cut that he sustained versus the Fundora fight. It's sad to see that that's off. It seems like His Excellency is still wanting to make that card better and add better fights to it because of that coming off, which I have a lot of respect for. But yeah, it is sad to see that Zhu vs Ortiz is off. Hopefully we still see that fight at some point because that is a great fight, but we'll have to wait and see how bad this cut is from Zhu and how long it keeps him out for. Crocker is set to rematch Papadopoulos September 7th. Janovic versus Mikhailovic. Muratalo vs Farmer. Sheehy, Lopez, Villa, Lemos and Foston Free will fight July 13th. I love seeing Janovic fight every time that he fights, so I'm very excited to see the return of him, and I hope he puts on another vintage Janovic performance, which I think he will be able to. Lee is set to join the Queensberry. That's an interesting joining partnership. Lee going to Queensberry. He's, I believe, been fighting with PBC and to now go with Queensberry. I don't think there's loads of options that wise, but you know, I suppose it does strengthen the Queensberry roster, but I just don't necessarily know if they can give him the right options. Moving on, Ben has called out Sissoko, Nakatani versus Astrolabio, Tanaka versus Rodriguez, and Kano versus Osaskuga and Nasukawa versus Rodriguez will fight July 20th. Khan is rumoured to fight KSI. That's an interesting one that seemingly Jake Paul's managed to leak. I don't really know necessarily where he got the information for that from, but either way, it's interesting. I don't really know who could win that one. Perhaps it is a good fight. At least he's not like a 60-year-old retired fighter, what KSI would be fighting in Khan, but I don't necessarily know why the fight's happening. I don't really think too much of a narrative can be built, but it would be interesting, I suppose. Lopez has called out Ball. Hutchinson won by unanimous decision versus Richards to become WBC Silver Light Heavyweight Champion. Ball won by split decision versus Ford to become WBA World Featherweight Champion. Shiraz won via TKO in round 11 versus Williams to remain WBC Silver Middleweight Champion. Dubois won via TKO round 8 versus Hergovich to become IBF Interim World Heavyweight Champion. Bivol won via TKO round 6 versus Zinner to remain IBO and WBA Super World Light Heavyweight Champion. Zhang won via TKO in round 5 versus Wilder. And to speak about the 5v5, I've had a chat with, the pleasure of a chat with Ra Hokum, who was out there and doing work out there, and he was out there in Riyadh when I spoke to him. I'll be sure to tag this video, and it was great to hear his opinions from somebody who managed to watch it live. But my opinions wise, Hutchinson versus Richards. Hutchinson put out a very good performance. I got my prediction right. I believed that he would be able to win. I believe he'd be able to be too much for Richards, who I didn't think had it necessarily still in him to an extent. I think he was too slow to an extent and just wouldn't be able to impose himself well enough, and he really didn't do that. He didn't get his jab going at all or anything like that, and I don't necessarily know how much is left for Richards. It will be intriguing to see where he goes next, but Hutchinson now has propelled himself into a world level, and I don't think he's necessarily going to go fight for a world title next, but it seems like Frank Warren wants to get him a possible final eliminator or eliminator of kinds, but to go from where he was early on in his career, where he got stopped, to where he is now, it's a really great story, and it is impressive to see him now getting on these big fights, and a fight like this being shown on such a big night, which is nice to see. Ball versus Ford was a great fight. I knew it would be a great fight. I got my prediction right for it. I thought Ball did do enough to win. He was winning the early rounds. Ford came into the later rounds. I think Ford early on, like I said in my prediction, standing and traded too much and just didn't necessarily box as well as what he could have done in the early rounds, and tried to keep Ball off of him at all, and really just did what he did versus Janabek in that aspect. But he can't just rely upon a miraculous ending where he manages to get a stoppage each time, and Ball last time out was unfortunate to not get the nod versus Vargas, so I believe it was nice to see him get the victory, which I think he deserved. And so now he's got possible rematch with Ford, but Ford seemingly wants to move up, so Vargas, the rematch there is definitely available. Like I said, Lopez has called him out now, so there's huge opportunities available for him, and I don't feel like until Inoue moves up, the actual featherweight division has got too much going on in it. So Ball is bringing these entertaining fights with his very entertaining style, so hopefully he can continue to provide these entertaining fights. And then Shiraz Williams, I got my prediction right for that one as well. In general, I said that Queensberry would win. Everybody was saying that Matchroom would win. I got my prediction right saying that Queensberry would win, and yeah, Shiraz, great performance from him. Probably one of the best performances from anybody in particular. And in general, just the way he managed to establish his jab after a while. He got rocked early, but he recovered very well, established his jab, stopped the explosiveness of Williams, and then really just was able to land cleanly and pick his shots very, very nicely. And in the end, of course, managing to get the stoppage as well. As the captain, having that added pressure onto him, it was really impressive to see that he delivered and is living up to the hype of being such a well-touted prospect from Queensberry. And now he's in line to fight Adamus. I think that makes for a great fight. He's called out Eubank Jr. I don't necessarily know if that will happen, but hopefully he manages to continue to keep fighting in Saudi, or with Saudi backing, and then get a fight versus Adamus hopefully next after Adamus's fight coming up soon. And then moving on to Dubois versus Hrgovic, I got my prediction right for that one as well. Dubois, I thought, would be able to show his will and his desire, which he showed versus Jarrell Miller, and he did that. Hrgovic was just being, I feel like, just too one-dimensional with his just two straight shots and being predictable, like I said in my prediction. It was interesting to see Dubois possibly coming in with his head a little bit and causing the cut to an extent, but it wasn't any technical unanimous decision win or anything like that, so I don't believe the cut actually was caused from the head clash, but I don't necessarily know. Either way, I think, like I say, he showed a lot of heart. I think he is improving still with each fight, and he is still one of the younger heavyweights in that kind of top level scene, and so now seemingly he's going to go on to fight AJ, and that makes for a huge English fight, and it's been a little while since we've had a huge English heavyweight fight, and so it's going to be brilliant to see, and hopefully it does end up happening. I think it's going to be interesting to see if AJ is going to be able to show that experience and class over him. But now at this point, Dubois has fought a lot of the top guys, so he has experience as well. So, like I say, it's going to make for an intriguing matchup. Hopefully it isn't for the IBF actual world title, because I would love to see Usyk keep that and be allowed to keep it. But in that way, we'll have to wait and see. And I don't necessarily know what could be next for Hrgovic, because he doesn't really seem to get opportunities, doesn't really seem to want to be fighting continuously, and I don't necessarily know if he's a marketable character. Moving on, Bivol Zinad, got my prediction right for that one as well. Great performance from Bivol, really turned it up when necessary. I think that little perhaps head-to-head that they had during the fight helped turn it up, but I thought Bivol boxed very well. Sometimes he can cruise through rounds perhaps a little bit, but he really turned it up when necessary. Knew that he got Zinad hurt, and just really destructive finish to the fight where perhaps he didn't necessarily need to do that. He could have just cruised for the fight if he wanted to, but Zinad, he did look outclassed. There's no discredit to that coming in on short notice, and I think just in general, style-wise, he wasn't good enough, and he was never realistically going to be good enough. But yet again, Bivol putting out another great performance against an opponent who was seen as a lot lesser to him. He did the same versus Lyndon Arthur, done the same now versus Zinad. It shows that he's not really one to overlook any opponent, which is really nice to see. And now, of course, October 12th, he is now going to be fighting Beterbiev, and of course that just makes for a huge fight. It's the fight that everybody wants in the first place, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this time everything goes well and we actually will end up seeing that fight next. And then moving on to the final fight of the 5v5, being the Zhang win but over Wilder. This is the only one of the predictions I got wrong for this card. I thought that Wilder would be able to come through, not even perhaps just go back to this old style of his, but just be able to show something a bit more, and he really didn't. He looked very poor. It was not really a great fight in general throughout the first few rounds, but Zhang's always going to be a threat in the early rounds, and as soon as he caught him, Wilder was lost, dazed, unsure what to do. Zhang pounced, got the stoppage. Yet again, 41 years old, I believe, and knocking out still top guys in the division is very impressive to see, but I would probably think that this is the end of Wilder now. I don't necessarily think he has it in him anymore. I don't think he has that kind of fear factor in him anymore, and I just don't think we can ever see him return to that. I think his style-wise, boxing-wise, has been exposed, and it's sad to see, but it's the end of an era in that aspect for him, and I'm sure heavyweights probably will join him soon that have been around that era that he was around when he was in his peak, and it would just be interesting to see where Zhang goes next, because if Dubois fights Joshua, I don't think I would see Zhang fight Parker again. So I don't necessarily know where Zhang will go next. There is options. Jared Anderson is another option, but we'll have to wait and see. But impressive victory for Zhang. 41 years of age. I'm sure he's only going to want more huge fights and only going to accept more huge fights. But the story he's been on to get to where he is now, at the age that he's at, is very impressive. And that is it for all the boxing news. Moving on now to the MMA news. Lima has re-signed with the PFL. Sandhagen vs Nurmagomedov, Luque vs Diaz, Vera vs Figueiredo, Dern vs Godinez, and Ferguson vs Chiesa will fight August 3rd. That's a really good fight night, an underrated fight night. I think one of the best fight nights I've seen in a while. And seeing Diaz, Ferguson, they're two guys who probably are going to lose, but they're both legends. Hopefully they both retire if they both lose, or either of them lose. But either way, it's interesting to see. And the Sandhagen versus Nurmagomedov fight is a great fight. Credit to Sandhagen for willingly giving the Nurmagomedov this opportunity, and he's been a threat as of recent, and so he's going to be difficult of a fight for Sandhagen. It'll be intriguing to see how he does. And Vera versus Figueiredo is another great matchup as well, and Figueiredo getting this opportunity to progress through the rankings and then possibly get a title shot afterwards. And then to speak about the actual event that went down, Lima won by decision versus Raposo, Perez won by decision versus Edwards, Harvez won by decision versus Gould, Matthews won by decision versus Rowe, Dawson won by decision versus Selecki, Almeida won by submission round 1 versus Romanov, Kopylov won by decision versus Almeida, Brown won by decision versus Dos Santos, Price won by decision versus Morono, Holland won by submission round 1 versus Alex Skajuk, Strickland won by decision versus Costa, Makhachev won by submission in round 5 versus Poirier to remain UFC lightweight champion, and that is all the MMA news. I'm going to go through this card now. So speak about the 3 main fights. Holland, that was it was a disgusting looking submission, to be honest, but Alex Skajuk didn't tap, and I don't blame Dean for pulling him out. Obviously there's the whole premise of tapping is meant to be when the fighter decides, but at that point his arm had already gone, so what else? Like, he could have stayed there, I suppose, but he's just fighting with one arm at that point, and it's disgusting, really. So I credit Dean for taking him out, and Holland being the best gatekeeper around as he claims he is. Perhaps he is, but it's entertaining whenever he fights nonetheless. The Strickland Costa, that was a very good performance from Strickland. I feel it wasn't too crazy or too gory or anything, perhaps what we're used to with Strickland, but he put out a clinical performance. He did exactly what he had to do. He managed to range well, didn't get caught too bigly with any shots. He was always just seemingly out of range with a lot of the leg kicks, and knew the threat which Costa posed, and was constantly putting pressure on, even if he wasn't throwing and too much, and he wasn't letting the energy go. And some of the stuff he was doing there was a little bit unconventional, but nonetheless it worked. Managed to get an impressive victory. The scorecard to go to Costa was awful, but either way, glad to see Strickland win. And be interested to see if he'll go back to a title shot now. He was talking about, waiting now to get a title shot, so he might not fight again until he gets the opportunity for a title shot or a top 2 guy, and I don't really blame him. I credit him to take the opportunity versus Costa, but yeah, it wasn't necessary, I suppose, so maybe he is worth just waiting and seeing how the division progresses. And then the main event, Makhachev, I got my prediction right, I got the one right for Strickland as well. Makhachev, submission around 5, that was a very good performance from Makhachev, but also from Poirier as well, put out a very heartsy performance, showed a better gas tank to what I thought he would have been able to show at this point in his career, and shown he can still mix it. It doesn't seem like he's going to be fighting again, but he can still mix it at the top. Makhachev gets a little bit of hate because he, commits to takedowns and stuff like that a lot, but striking wise, he went and stood and went toe to toe a lot of the time and landed more significant strikes, and in close, like I said in my prediction, he's got a beautiful knee in close as well as the uppercuts that he was mixing in as well. And yeah, in the end, to be able to get the submission victory was a very nice submission, a nice way to end the fight after a grueling fight which he had to go through, yet again cementing himself pound for pound wise. There's been that talk between Dana White saying that John Jones is pound for pound, and everybody perhaps to an extent disagreeing, a few people, and I perhaps don't really have too much of an opinion, but nonetheless, Makhachev probably on track to be the best UFC lightweight ever, perhaps. We'll have to wait and see. I probably think he will fight Sarukian next. Then at that point he probably has completed everything major in the lightweight division, so then he probably would be worth him moving to fight in the welterweight or something like that. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.